for both of them. So without further ado, the first one I'm going to go through, this is fascinating to me, is a guy that came up through the FCS ranks. He actually has ties to the University of Florida. He's from Gainesville. Kade Bell. If you're an old school Florida State fan, you probably remember that name. Well, Kade Bell, a family member, is somebody that is coming up the ranks. He is currently at Pitt. He's only 31 years old, but let's be honest. Pittsburgh, under their coaching staff, the head coach there is obviously extremely old school, defensive-minded, run first, not very friendly with the passing game as a rule, minus the 2021 season, and I'll come back to that, ironically, here in just a little bit. You're looking at a situation where they get a transfer in at quarterback, Eli Holstein. Kade Bell is the OC quarterback guy there. I know Eli. He was an Elite 11 player, went to Bama. He's from Louisiana, just north of Baton Rouge. Didn't work out year one at Alabama, goes there. Nobody expects anything from him, and he wins the job. Here are his numbers. Redshirt freshmen usually suck at the quarterback position, even if they were at the same school. Continuity, 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 reps, 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 same players. He's gone against the grain there. Now, I know this young man has a lot of talent. I've seen him throw several times. He's got a big arm, but it's just extremely rare that high school to college, in your second year in college, that you come up like this. So here are his numbers so far this season. I believe it's through 9 games. 208 of 335, 62.1, 2,494 yards, 7.4 yards per attempt, 22 scores, 8 interceptions. Now, he had a bad game in their last contest against SMU, which a lot of teams have. They're the best team in the ACC right now. But other than that, Holstein's been really consistent. And as I was kind of going through the stats for Pittsburgh, if you look at Holstein game to game, again, this last game that they had was the exception, but he's been really, really consistent. I found it interesting also that it was from game one. A lot of times, even if he's had a good season, a first-year starter stinks right out the gate. He was pretty good in the first game, to say the least. I know it was Kent State, but he was 31 of 41, 75.6, 8.2 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 336 yards. At North Carolina, they have a solid defense. I mean, that's somebody that obviously Florida State just played against here recently. 25 of 42, 59.5%, 381 yards, 9.1 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. He is a kid, but he's playing like an NFL veteran in terms of making decisions to throw for those kinds of numbers. Eli is like 19, 20 years old. So that's a good sign. Also, Kade's background is really, really interesting because, again, he's family member with the Bell family. If you know anything about prep football in the greater Ocala to Gainesville area, the Bell family has been around. They've had a lot of success. He played quarterback there in that area. Then he went to Jacksonville, played small school football from 2011 to 15. His dad is Kade Bell, by the way. He was all Pioneer Football League player, threw for 3,181 yards, 31 touchdowns as his best season. He immediately went into the coaching profession right after that. 2016, he was GA at Valdosta State. He moved up a couple of years later to being the OC just 2 years later. That's crazy. South Florida's offensive analyst in 2019. And then in 2021, he gets a job to be the OC at Western Carolina. This is wild. Looking at the numbers, it's crazy to me that so many guys come through that rank and just don't. It takes forever. It takes 10 years. Like Signetti, for instance, at Indiana, took a really long time. Great coach, but it's taken so much longer for him to kind of develop his career. It's wild that this guy has done it already to the offensive coordinator position. And Kade, again, he's 31. So here are the numbers for Western Carolina's offense, 3 key stats from them last year. They were first in the FCS in total yards, 504.1. They were fourth in scoring at 37.5. Rushing, 182.9. Passing, they were third, 321.2. So, again, balance. He's had quarterbacks that could throw the football, and they don't mind if they hand it off. He's had guys that got after it in the passing game. If you look at their totals in like this year for Pittsburgh, obviously I just talked about Holstein. But the run game, I know Pittsburgh doesn't have a great offensive line. I'm being kind. But their run game's pretty solid, too. They've got, right now, Desmond Reed's pretty good back. He's averaging 5.7 yards per carry. And again, how many guys is Pittsburgh going to put in the NFL at O-line? I mean, really? One maybe? That would be my guess. He's got 118 carries for 670 yards, 5.7 per tote, 4 scores. Desmond Reed's pretty darn good. Last year, I mean, Desmond, he was on the roster, but he didn't make a dent. So it's different. I don't know what to really say other than the coaching's gotten better. And maybe it's a situation where he's a guy that kind of found his niche playing with this team. And Kerwin Bell has got a kid that's growing up, might end up being a tremendous coach, kind of like he was a player for the Gators back in the day. So I'm really intrigued by him. And here's a couple other things about his career that make it interesting. He's coached in Georgia for a number of years. He's coached in Florida. He's coached in the state of Alabama. He's coached in North Carolina. Now he's coached in Pennsylvania. What do all of those states have in common? Recruiting. Every one of those states has talent that Florida State would have loved to have. Obviously, within the state of Florida is pretty specific. 2019, he was at USF. But Florida State needs contacts, and we've talked about this numerous times on this show. If you're going to recruit at Florida State, you got to be willing. You got to want to go after it. There's going to be family concern. You have to throw away some of that. But having contacts in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, those are the hotbeds for Florida State. And as a bonus, he has coached in the state of Pennsylvania. It doesn't hurt. Pittsburgh's always had talent. That's not going to change. Football is extremely important to the greater Pittsburgh area. I don't think that's going to change with Florida State. They've always dabbled a little bit in that area, trying to get players out of Pennsylvania. So that's not